I was checking out some of your work on psychedelics and all that kind of stuff, and that's awesome, man. I like that you're taking sort of a multidisciplinary approach to your channel.
Well, I mean, I can't take any credit for that, really, man. I mean, for me, any of the stuff that I've put on YouTube thus far has really just been like scratching my own itch. Just the things that have been a big part of my life for the past 10 or 15 years. When I encounter people or when I seek people out that know more about it or that are have a lot of experience, and I jump at the chance to sit down and have a conversation with them. So I don't know if you saw the stuff
Totally.
from the Beyond Psychedelics conference in Prague last year, but like, man, it was the coolest thing to be able to sit down with people like Bill Richards. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
Yeah, I am.
has been at the forefront of kind of legitimizing psychedelic science for the last, God, 50 years, if not more. And just to have the chance to sit with these people and pick their brains, and like, I just feel tremendous gratitude that they say yes to sit down with me. So yeah, the YouTube channel has just been me scratching my own itch and putting stuff out there. But and I've been in, obviously we'll talk about Bitcoin, but I've been interested in it and watching it for a long time now. And I just, as everybody, the virus grows within you, I
Right,
guess. And
right.
I just want to be a bit more, I want more of those conversations, and no, no particular, bias, kind of like, I love speaking with the entrepreneurs in the space, the technical people. But the long-winded way of saying why I came around to this is just like, I find I'm relatively new to crypto Twitter. I've
Mm,
been into the space for a while, but kind of just too lazy to be involved in crypto Twitter. But obviously, it's filled with all these interesting people and opinions and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it might be fun just to sit down and jam for a little bit with someone like yourself.
totally. So obviously, you probably know about some of the subcultures, I guess. I would call them. Uh, I would say I belong to the only rational sect of crypto Twitter, which is the Bitcoin maximalist.
Right,
So
right.
you're fairly familiar with all that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Um,
it's hard not to be. But I mean,
so how long?
I am as well.
When did you start? When did you start getting interested in Bitcoin?
Well, you know what? I'll say this, because you brought up kind of the psychedelic stuff. The truth is, it's hard for me to remember the timeline now, because I don't know if this makes sense in terms of price, but I do remember when there was a lot of like excitement that it met parity with the US dollar. Like,
Yeah.
I remember that time, and I remember everybody getting super excited about it. So I was familiar with it prior to that. And because I have been a gold bug for the last 20 years. The whole spiel about fiat currency, Federal Reserve, central banking, all that stuff, um, has been like, I've always been I've been that guy at the party that rails on about that kind of shit, when I was younger.
Oh,
Uh,
totally,
and
totally.
and so naturally I was interested in it when I first came upon it. But I mean, I guess basically I didn't think, I didn't have the technical understanding to appreciate it to the extent that I guess I now do, and that many people do. And I didn't have, and as a result of that, I didn't think it could kind of survive the various attack vectors that I had in my mind, right? So I still
Right,
kind
right.
of felt that precious metals were the way to go, and so that's what I was kind of stuck in that for a while. But back to the psychedelics for a second. My friend and I, we'd been really intentional and kind of serious about learning about psychedelics and pursuing those sort of experiences for a while. And DMT was one that we had not ever experienced, and the Silk Road obviously was a place where you could procure. And
Yep.
we actually, I'm not incriminating myself here because we actually never did, um, but that was, I guess, the second time where I encountered Bitcoin, because you had to get it to buy things on the Silk Road. So that kicked it off, and then bought it for the first time. Ultimately, unfortunately, in 2014, I started conducting some of these interviews in 2015. Started with Bobby Lee because we were both in Shanghai at the time, and then it's been kind of off and on since then.
Dude, I have a very similar story actually. Tried to go on Silk Road by DMT.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And when my buddy came to me like a year later at the bar and was like, "Dude, Bitcoin hit 1,300," and I was despondent. I was like, I could have been a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
What the fuck? And I sat there nursing my beer the rest of the night, just being like, "Oh my God, I missed my one shot."
Yeah.
And then a year and a half later, when the price cratered, I was like, "Oh shit, now's the time," when the price was around like $200. And that's kind of how it kicked off for me. I didn't end up getting DMT off the Silk Road either. And I'm curious about your experience with DMT because what's weird about it to me, man? It just came to me. A roommate I was living with at the time just brought it home. It was almost like I set my intention and then it just wandered into my life.
Yeah.
It was very, very strange. And I talk to people who have that similar experience with it a lot of the time.
Yeah, man. You know what's funny, and I actually didn't even realize this when I was telling the story. I still have never done NN dimethyltryptamine. It's
Oh, you did 5-MeO.
I did 5-MeO, yeah,
Ah,
with Octavio Redig, who's a relatively well-known kind of I don't want to use the term shaman, but a guide for 5-MeO.
yeah, no,
And
totally. What is 5-MeO like? Because I've heard it's very dysphoric. Did you have that experience?
um, man, as you know, these things are really hard to articulate, but
Right,
um,
right.
it was. I mean, at first it was like just the come up was like a rocket ship. By the time you exhaled,
Totally.
you were just like, and the G force on your body, like I felt myself kind of caving inward just because it felt so powerful. But I always cringe at my own explanations of this stuff because it never does it justice.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I understand that, or I've heard that NN is more of a kind of a landscape emerges and you're kind of immersed in another environment where 5-MeO is, for me, was just completely dissolving. I mean, again, this
Mm,
sounds super hippie, but you just kind of dissolve into the energy of
yeah.
consciousness, and whatever, so for me, that was just unspeakable,
Oh yeah.
connection with
Oh
energy,
yeah.
love, all that kind of stuff. And it's so quick. I mean, like for me, most of my like pursuit or practice with this stuff has been psilocybin. And, that's like a 3 to 5 hour journey. You have time to work with it. But this is like, I think I was down in less than 10 minutes. And it's just, it's hard to integrate afterwards because you're just like, what the fuck was
Totally.
that?
Totally.
What
Yeah,
about you?
I've never done MEO. I did NN dimethyltryptamine. It is exactly, like same thing that everybody says. You can't describe it. You've been there. Um, but it is very much like it's like meeting the machine elves that McKenna talks about.
Yeah.
It's much more of that experience. And to me, that was like a cosmically frightening experience. And I think I went into it with too much ego wrapped up in it. And I kind of had this idea that I think a lot of psychonauts have early on, which is like, I'm going to be like a spiritual warrior, man. And I'm going to, and that's just all bullshit. And then you get your ass kicked and you're like, okay, I'm just
Yeah.
going to go into this like a humble servant and see what I can uncover.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm at with it now. I don't, it's weird with me. I like don't smoke weed really. Just every like 3 years, I'll have a big trip, like a heroic journey or do NN dimethyltryptamine or LSD or something. It's kind of like just a weird, powerful reset that I find myself going back to.
Yeah. Well, what did McKenna used to say? He said something about like don't do it often, but do it
Yeah.
fully or something. Or I can't remember the exact quote, but it was
Right,
something
right,
along
right.
those lines.
That's why, yeah. When I take Rogan's advice, and when I do weed, I just do an edible and treat it like a psychedelic experience, and
Right.
I just fucking blast off.
Have you
Or
ever gotten in the
involute,
tank
really.
with
You,
edible?
I don't like the tank, but it's probably just because I have a really hard time quieting my monkey mind.
Yeah.
So it sort of takes over. Like there's like a chatter going on the whole time, and I'm not adept enough at practicing, and I don't have my own tank, so I would have to get one and really practice a lot more often.
Yeah, I
I
was
did one of the old school tanks. Now they have all the fancy ones and shit all over the place.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I was in Amsterdam what was that? Last year, I guess, last summer, and did it for the first time. I'd done the tank, on its own several times, and obviously had done edibles several times, but combined the two, and I mean, it is, I think Rogan's talked about this before too, but it is a very, very powerful experience. I can't, I'm cautious about putting things in the class of the psychedelics because for me, this, the psychedelic experience is like the
Yeah,
quintessential mystical. I don't know what to call it, but
yeah,
it's the apex of whatever that, whatever consciousness is. It seems to be the apex of that, and it's not quite that, but it's extremely like it's just a unique, compelling, thought-provoking experience. But more time, and I had a 2-hour tank session, and I came out, and I was still, a sack of potatoes, and I could barely I could barely pay my bill, and then you got to go out in the streets of Amsterdam and have these tourists everywhere, and so that was not ideal, but interesting
you
experience.
know, it's interesting how these things interconnect. Did you ever hear the story about Jobs when he was at Apple, and he would walk around, and if he had a disagreement with an engineer, he would ask him and be like, "Hey, hey, John, did you ever do LSD?" And the engineer would be like, "No," and he goes, "That's what I thought. That's why you can't see it." Like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's and Leary had a lot of that with the early internet, where he was describing the internet in psychedelic terms, and I think
yeah.
he was largely right. And Bitcoin is another fractal on top of that.
Absolutely, man. And just back to your previous point, just because when you said it, obviously it resonated with me because I'm the same. But I don't smoke weed either, and I do one heavy psychedelic trip a year, and it's like you said, it's kind of a reset. You review the year, how things go, what do you got to work on, what do you got to deal with and flush out. And I mean, it really, I mean, loaded
Yeah,
word, but
totally.
it's a spiritual kind of practice, and I take it
Yeah, I mean,
super
I've
seriously.
I've I've smoked weed, for like a year straight, and it kind of feels like you're in a abusive relationship or like a codependent relationship,
It can
and
be,
I
it
just
can be,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, for me it was at that time in my life, so I haven't gone back to it. Maybe it's now it's like here and there with friends if it's
Yeah.
getting passed around, I do it,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds very similar to me. And but once I guess the more serious I got about the psychedelics, I think the more I wanted to leave the weed behind, just because I don't know, psychedelics, provide clarity for me, both in the experience
Yes.
and
Yeah.
subsequent. And weed, as great as munching out is, and laughing with friends and sex and everything else, is like I get cloudy with weed, and I kind of don't like that.
Oh, dude, and it takes. I mean, DMT trips take. I've had trips that took 3 years to fully integrate.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's legit. Like it takes a lot of internal work to integrate these experiences because
definitely.
they're so foreign.
Yeah, but
Or
go ahead.
yeah. Do you know Donald Hoffman? Have you ever seen any of Donald Hoffman's work?
No.
So he's got this great TED talk. He's a professor at UC Irvine, and basically he describes reality as a graphical user interface determined based on our evolutionary fitness, so our ability to reproduce. So everything we see in our environment is like the trash can on your computer dock. Like that's just lines of code, but we view it as a trash can because that helps us navigate the computer space.
Yeah.
So we see things in our environment the same way in reality. Like we think we're seeing reality, but really he ran these sims in a computer with his team, and the organisms that truly see reality go extinct super quickly.
Right.
So we've evolved to not see the full picture, and then I think when you take these drugs, you're seeing the source code, and you're just like, oh shit, this is too much fucking information. Which is why you would never reproduce. It's
Yeah.
too much to take in. You're like, I can't think about fucking right now.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think McKenna or some of those old school orators on the subject even said that, like, part of, I guess, the evolutionary influence potentially of psychedelics was like at low doses, like visual acuity and other things that made operating in the real world slightly more advantageous or gave you an
Right.
advantage. And at the high doses maybe help facilitate like kind of the evolution of the brain and art and language. But that, at the super high doses, you're not it had to be, it couldn't be the default state, I guess what I'm trying to say, it had to
Yeah,
be
exactly.
short-term access and had to have a powerful impact because, that's not a place that you can practically spend a lot of your time, a short amount of time
Exactly.
infrequently. And that's where you do work and you grow and, whatever else.
Yeah.
But
No,
it
totally.
is funny, man. You mentioned like the intersection of all this stuff, and I'm sure there's many reasons, but one has just got to be having an open mind about stuff, and there is kind of interesting parallel because even uh, someone who has that psychedelic experience, like, and I know they're all different, but let's just say breaks through, for lack of a better term. Um, you want to tell people about it. You want to tell your loved ones and your friends, and you want to bring people into this and try to communicate that this experience that is what it
Oh,
is available to people, right? But even
oh
if,
yeah, man.
and I think it's
It's
bad.
this.
I think
It's
it's
the same. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. But what I was gonna say is, I think it's bad practice to try to like, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? So I never like force it, and I'm actually
mm,
I'm pretty apprehensive about bringing anyone into that circle. But even sometimes, like, even if everything is set up right and they take the substance at the right amount, the right time, everything like that, people can reject the experience. Like I've seen it. It's not just a matter
yeah.
of chewing, you swallowing it, and the experience will be delivered to you. Like you've got to get out of your own way a lot for the experience to be able to be delivered to you. And the
Hmm.
parallel that I think you understand I'm making is like with something like Bitcoin, we've all had those conversations with people where it doesn't really matter how rational or logical the reasoning that you're using is. It's just there's some form of a block, and there's a closed mindedness or there's a whatever, and it's just not going to get through. Like there's no
Yeah.
in that setting, in that conversation you're having, it's not going to happen.
Oh, totally, man. There's a guy like in the space. His name's Connor Brown, and he basically has a thing where he's like, people are going to be led to this by fear, and that's probably you don't know you need the arc until the floodwaters start rising. So
Right.
I think that's when we're going to see the stampede, and those of us who are quote unquote part of the family, like Noah's family, going out to gather people. It just doesn't work because people don't listen to you. They
Yeah.
think you're a stark raving lunatic.
Yeah. And but I mean,
All right, cool, man.
but it's interesting,
You want to?
like,
Oh,
sorry, I was just going to say it's interesting because it would seem that the writing is on the wall so much, like these days, but it seemed like that 10 years ago too, which is why,
yeah.
I was interested in it then. So it kind of plays with you a bit, like you don't know when it's actually going to be to such an extent that people really need to start paying attention to it. But on the other hand, it doesn't
Totally.
really matter because, Bitcoin is doing its thing and everyone
Yep.
seems to benefit from that. Um, you
It
got
kind of it's gradually and then all at once, and
right,
it's that just seems to be the case.
and it
So
does
yeah,
that
you
over
want
and
to jump
over.
jump into more Bitcoin specific shit.
Yeah,
You could
sure.
feel free to you could use any of that psychedelic stuff if you want. It might not be.
Oh man,
Uh,
I usually just publish what I record, so if it's okay with you, it's totally okay with me.
mm,
Um,
totally.
how
Just
how
put it all up.
how are you on time?
I'm good, man. I don't have to be any place until 1, so
Okay.
we can go for a while if we want.
Yeah, so part of this, man, the first part, and I'm just getting, trying to figure out the format that's going to work for me on this stuff. But I think the way I'll do it is just kind of like a general chat at the beginning, and then I'll just finish off with some rapid fire stuff, and I might separate
Okay, cool.
that into two pieces of content or put it together depending on how it comes out. Um,
That works.
but I got a couple questions from you just based on, my limited knowledge about you on Twitter. But yeah, I was going through your tweets tonight, and your account got canceled for using the term Gaylord Fokker, which is obviously the name of the character in Meet the Fockers.
This is true. Yeah, I was arguing with somebody who in his Twitter bio it said he was a male nurse, and so I said, listen, Gaylord Fokker over here doesn't think X, Y, or Z. I forgot what the argument was about, but the censors at Twitter were like, "This is hate speech.
My
We must
God.
delete this man." But I get deleted all the time because I go hard on Twitter.
But but that, man, I mean, that seems egregious to me. I knew things were bad. I pay attention to the goings on and like the bannings and the shadow bannings and all the crazy nonsense that's going on today around free speech. But invoking the name of a movie character without changing it, that seems a bit much.
Somebody pointed out to me, they were like, the censors at Twitter are probably so young they don't know that movie. And I was like, wow, that really probably is the case.
Yeah, that could be true. You mentioned another thing that I thought was interesting. I'll ask you about is you said, something along the lines of, you got into Bitcoin for, maybe kind of simple or not that, basic reasons. And you're kind of 5 years on just beginning to understand the mind of Satoshi. I'm sure we all kind of do that differently, but why don't you crack into that a little bit? Explain that to me.
Well, it's interesting because not to humble brag or anything, but I've been tested. I'm a relatively high IQ person, and I thought that when I came into Bitcoin, I was going to be able to very simply disprove it, and I couldn't. And then I think that leads a lot of us down this rabbit hole where we start looking into the design of this thing, and we're like, holy shit, who's the guy who invented this, or the group, or the girl, or whoever. And man, Satoshi was 100 years ahead of his time. I mean, he was a really rare thinker. I don't think we've seen somebody of his caliber of thought since maybe Einstein, or even further back. He reminds me a lot of Isaac Newton, very cross-disciplinary.
Yeah,
it's fascinating, and I love the myth of Satoshi. I want to heighten that myth. I love the fact that he's anonymous, and the skill and the discipline. I like to think that he's still alive, and that he's watching the project, and but we're never going to know. So it's just a fascinating discussion, I think, all around.
Super, and I love that is how it was created and kind of passed on to the world, and I mean, I don't think there could have been a better way, and I think even a part of me is like the mystique around how this kind of revolutionary thing emerged. It makes me even more confident in it. Not because he's not around to be character destroyed or whatever, but just like in the annals of history, like this seems right. Like this crazy new thing would be launched with this kind of mystique around it. Like not some, known dude that, I don't know. It just that mystique just adds to it for me. But
there was a quote from the King of England around the time George Washington stepped down from power. And I think the specific quote is something like, if he does that, steps down, he will have become the greatest man in history. And I think what Satoshi does is a step beyond what George Washington did.
Yeah.
Right. It's just crazy when you start to think about it.
And, and it'll be interesting to see if it evolves and changes over time. I mean, because, the man, woman, or group is presumably, if everything continues to go as I'm sure we both expect it to, going to be an extremely wealthy individual.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Satoshi's coins are always a mystery that a lot of people like to talk about, but of course the project is going to evolve. I mean,
sure.
Some of the brightest people in the world are in this space. Do you know who Ray Kurzweil is? He's a futurist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I once had a conversation with Ray Kurzweil when I was 19, and it was the only time in my life, I'm a pretty smart guy, and I usually walk around and I'm a little more knowledgeable than other people. That was the only time in my life I ever felt like 30 or 40 IQ points below somebody.
I saw the tweet you made. Yeah,
dude, I have that feeling all the time in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the smartest people in the world are in this space, and it's humbling every day to be in this space. Not just Satoshi, but guys like Adam Back, Peter Willop, Peter Todd, like Brian Bishop. Yeah. The list goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I've made a much more. Because my initial interest in it was from kind of the monetary aspect, libertarian Austrian economics sort of thing, way back when. And, because I'm not a technical person, so there's, that's something I need to overcome when I encounter these things. But I've been making a more concerted effort to try to push my limits in that regard and get further into trying to understand the tech around it, because I want to understand it to as much as possible, to the extent possible. And and obviously that's a huge part. And especially if I'm going to be speaking to people, like it does matter the degree to which you understand the specialness of the person you're speaking with, in that like having some appreciation that, you're not going to understand the tech on their level, obviously, but just being able to realize like this person gets something to a very high level, and I need to, kind of pay lip service to that, or speak with them in a way that recognizes that.
No, totally. I totally agree.
The other thing, something I sometimes do when I'm imagining this whole mystique about how all this got started is I try to have like a little movie in my mind of what the creator's reaction was when like all the pieces finally came together, when it was like, okay, I'm going to like, this is going to connect to this, and this is going to do that, and that's going to support this, and it's all going to work together in this way. Like that, when that final puzzle piece just slides into the corner, and he like, or they step back from it, and was like, "Huh." Like I wish I could, I wish there was a fly in the wall to capture that moment in history. Was it like a crazy eureka moment, or was it just like, "Yep, this works now. I guess I'll
right.
publish it."
Well, I think that's it's one of those things in science. That's it's not the most, the biggest discoveries don't come from eureka, I got it. The biggest discoveries come from that's weird. So I think it was probably something along those lines,
right? And even even though it all made sense from a technical point of view, I'm sure he would be at least somewhat surprised at the phenomenon that it's become, right? At least the way he was speaking about it would suggest that.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, taking on the U.S. government is like firing a BB gun at a freight train.
Right.
So the fact that he actually did that and is in process of destroying the Death Star, I think that would be surprising to anybody who made that shot.
Sure. Sure. Now I saw also on one of your limited collection of tweets that now exists, but that you're into film. You're a filmmaker of some kind, and you were talking about kind of, wouldn't it be cool to make an allegorical myth tale about this a la Avatar, but related to Bitcoin and all the Bitcoin related stuff?
Right. Yeah. So I went to film school, and I have over 1 billion views online as a content creator, just on various channels. And
sick.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but then you like see some little girl who does makeup tutorials who has 10 billion views, and you're like, maybe I'm not as cool as I think I am.
What was the content like? What was the theme of the content, the stuff that you did?
It's been all over. Like I've done sports commercials. If you're into basketball, I did something that was pretty viral a little while ago. Music videos. Man, it's hard to even describe how much viral pieces, marketing things, short films. I got to thinking about it. It's like you've had the experience, I'm sure, where when we talk to people and you start explaining how the blockchain works, or you get into the the specifics about mining or whatever it is, their eyes just hardcore glaze over.
Right.
And as they should. Like that's not how we learn as humans. We learn as humans via story. And if you think about something like The Wizard of Oz, which is a very simple allegorical tale about us going back to the gold standard, and the wizard is basically like the Fed behind the curtain, pulling all the, strings and everything. That really resonated with people so deeply in the culture that movie was released, 80 years ago, and I'm talking to you about it right now on the podcast. So that's sort of the kind of thing we need in Bitcoin. And I'm starting to work on it now. These things have to be really simple in order to get mass appeal. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, which, you've been in the Bitcoin space. It's fucking so hard to simplify some of this shit.
And still get it across, like still get the kind of specialness or uniqueness about it across.
Well, I think the main point is about scarcity, right? Because human beings instinctively understand scarcity. That's built into our epigenetic code.
Yeah.
We're all monkeys on an island. There's only so many fruit trees. Suddenly you have 30 pieces of fruit. I want those pieces of fruit. That goes really far back to who we are. And I think part of the thing is Bitcoin is one of the scarcest resources in the world, and you're going to be trading your time for something. That's just how it works. So when you work a job, You get paid in money. You're effectively trading your time for that thing, for that product or service. Now, do you want to be trading your time, this is time you could be spending with your friends, with your family, doing things that you love. Most people are spending that time doing meaningless shit at some menial job, and they're trading it for pieces of paper, which are being inflated by the elites. I mean, it's outright theft, and it's preposterous what's going on. So getting that message into people's heads and making them understand that, I think, is going to be really key for help, because I don't want to see just a bunch of rich people scoop this up and it's some sort of, I don't think any of us want to see that.
No.
That's why I keep evangelizing, because I want to help normal people.
Yeah.
I want to help people in the third world. I want to help my friends and family who don't quite get it. I don't want, there's going to be a Pareto distribution.
Right.
People are going to be rich. That's just how it is. But, it's a rising tide that raises all ships, I think.
Yeah.
So if we can get back to that world, we're going to have a much more prosperous existence.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'll come back to that in a second. But it is interesting that although there's not anything like the kind of piece of content, short movie, or what you were just describing, and I think it's an awesome project to be working on. But I just watched Money Heist tonight on Netflix, like season 2, and
I haven't seen it, but it has a terrible name.
Yeah, it does, and it's all Spanish, so you're reading the entire time, which is a change. But what I was going to bring up is just that this idea of like people questioning the money for the first time is starting to seep into the culture, and basically the big dramatic scene at the end of, I guess, season 2 was he was making the case to someone like one of the cops or something like that, or it might have even been public, but just that they were stealing money by printing it from the mint, right? And so they printed, let's say, $1 billion, and they steal it, and to them it's like a relatively victimless crime. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't actually take something from anybody. And then he goes on this big spiel about how in 2012 the ECB printed 182 billion euros out of thin air, and gave it right to the banks and called it, liquidity injection or quantitative easing or whatever terminology they use. And he was obviously framing that in the context of an enormous injustice, and a much larger injustice compared to what they were trying to pull off. And so, like 10 years ago, I at least from my point of view, the content that I came across, again, like I was that weirdo at a social function or at a gathering, whatever, holding up like a paper bill and being like, you guys know what this is, right? Or more importantly, what it isn't, but so many people just, the status quo is so powerful that you don't question it. And money is like one of the major unquestionables, but now it seems to be seeping into the culture that people are starting to wonder. And obviously it's, Bitcoin bears a lot of the responsibility for that, because just having it exist creates that contrast that forces people to look at them and be like, well, how is that one different from that one? Whichever one they're looking at, and then they maybe they go down the rabbit hole and maybe they don't have the time or whatever. But yeah, I think,
that's a big thing. That's a big thing I think about, man. I always think about just like somebody's abuela who should be able to store her digital gold under her digital mattress without having to go, swim with the sharks on Wall Street. I think the system we have is immoral, and it's, created a rigged game for smart people to get ahead. And listen, I'm one of the smart people, and I'm going to get ahead no matter what the system is. That's just how it is. But I want to save everybody else. Like I don't like participating in this fraudulent system.
Yeah. Now you reference kind of what kind of a society and culture we could have if we, if something like Bitcoin or Bitcoin ultimately became widespread. And you also mentioned in a tweet kind of the golden era of civilization that Bitcoin may usher in. And I think, again, all of us that are in this space probably daydream about the different ways that it will have positive impact on society and culture and all that kind of stuff. But, what are your initial thoughts on how that will unfold or what it would look like? The things that would affect first, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be something that none of us can fully conceive of. But I will tell you that Bitcoiners think very differently than statists. There are a lot of people who think in terms of top-down architecture, which is I'm going to go and I'm going to put in this beautiful, elegant system, and it's the mortgage market from the last collapse, and it's never going to fail because I'm so smart and we're so smart, and that's not how Bitcoiners think, because when you do that, you can't account for black swans. So the system we're designing is an emergent system where individuals emerge upwards with new ideas, new innovations. I mean, that's free market capitalism.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with capitalism. Capitalism is beautiful and natural, and it drives human progress. There is something wrong with cronyism, which is what we experience now. And I don't think any of us want to see that system. So it's very hard to predict what's going to bubble up. But I know that when you have a solid foundational base for people to work from and plan for the long term, that you're going to see things like, think about America versus the third world. We have a very stable government, and we have a very stable currency. Now we can get into a big conversation about why that is and the trade-offs, the war and, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, that's all real. But having that solid base has allowed America to be the most innovative nation on earth. And that's just an undisputed fact. So I think we can give that to everybody. The innovations we're going to see are inconceivable.
Yeah.
I don't even know what people smarter than me or more ingenuitive than I am can come up with. And I'm just excited to, see what happens.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I like I said, when I do those daydreaming sessions, or when I get caught in a daydream about imagining this stuff, I mean, it's really exciting just to if we have this kind of a world, and obviously the world is super fucked up in many ways, but also it's great and in many ways. And if this is the kind of a world that we got from a highly flawed, monetary standard, let's say, it's really interesting to think about what might come from a far better, like you said, base on which to build society and culture from. I mean, yeah, I think that's why we're part of the reason why all of us in this space are so excited about it.
I think healthcare is a great example of this because, I mean, we could go on and on about the sick care system we have. And, it's not the people that are working inside of healthcare that are to blame. It's just the system itself is fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
And everybody has malaligned incentives. Because I talk to really smart doctors all the time. I have vested interest in healthcare. I talk to smart docs all the time who are really trying to fix the system, but they're running up against all these entrenched interests, and they just can't. They don't have time to, they're being ground down by the busy work that's being foisted on them by, I don't know if you know, but there are these systems called EMRs, or electronic medical records.
Yeah.
And that's why when you go to the doctor nowadays, your doctor just stares at his computer and doesn't talk back to you, because he's too busy filling out paperwork. Right. And this EMR is basically a glorified cash register with some patient shit tacked onto the back end of it.
Yeah.
And I just like to see all of this demolished because it's so terrible, and we've stalled the engine of progress, and yet we're all patting ourselves on the back. Like Peter Thiel, Founders Fund, his saying is, we were promised flying cars, and instead we got 140 characters.
Yeah.
Right. Which, like, Twitter's great, but where the fuck are the flying cars, man?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got people like Elon that are like, hold my beer, I'm working on it.
Right. And people hate Elon. Like, half the people hate Elon.
That's so fucked up, man.
Into oblivion.
I know. With Elon, I'm like, I want to root. Yeah, I'm just like, Jesus, dude. I hope you got security. Right? I hope you don't fucking die in a plane crash. You're probably taking like 20 flights a week or something. Like, just play it safe, brother.
Totally. The day Elon dies is going to be a sad day.
Oh, don't even say it, bro. Don't even say it.
Yeah, he's like, hopefully it's many decades in the future, but he's our like Henry Ford.
Yeah.
I mean,
on steroids. On steroids.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things you mentioned, man, is like, and actually these are two things. One that's I see a lot more now that I'm kind of starting to dip my toes into crypto Twitter more, that people are starting to realize that like being involved in and learning about Bitcoin like has a lot of spillover into other elements of your life. Like you were relating it to the healthcare system and the way people relate and treat their healthcare, right? And I think like
Hmm.
I haven't kind of fleshed out specifically maybe why this is the case yet. There's a couple like obvious reasons, but fully. But why when people start to like really take responsibility for their financial sovereignty or that sort of thing, then maybe they start questioning sovereignty in other elements of their life. And like, do I have health sovereignty if I'm stuffing my face full of shit all day long, or do I have
Yeah.
and whatever kind of the whatever category we're looking at there. But it really seems like people that come into this community and go deep, it starts really filtering out or bleeding into other areas of their life.
Totally. Personal responsibility is the new counterculture, and
I love that. Did you?
No offense. No, that's just being thrown around on Twitter. It's definitely not mine.
That's
every idea is stolen. But no offense to our parents, but they never had. I would ask these questions when I was a kid. How does it work? How does the Fed print, et cetera, et cetera?
Really?
Because my father was a lawyer, and we would have these kind of conversations at the dinner table, and I never got any answer back that was anything other than trust the government.
Yeah.
Which is just to say trust other men elsewhere. It's like the cloud is someone else's computer. Yeah, well, the government is just other people. Yeah. Right? Like, why should we trust other people when we have the ability now to be fully self-sovereign?
Yeah.
And sovereignty is scary, because we come from super soft times. I'm sure you had this feeling the first time you made a Bitcoin transaction, which is like, wait, I'm just sending digital cash out into cyberspace. What happens if it gets stolen? Right? Yeah. It's all on me. And then, but every transaction you make, you become more and more self-sovereign. I mean, I'm at the point right now where you can't fuck with me, dude. They can put in they can put in laws wherever the fuck they want. I have enough money and social mobility to move anywhere in the world where I find a favorable regulatory climate.
Right.
What are you really going to do to me?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm willing to lose everything. I'll tell you, I have a lot of my personal net worth invested in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to watch it all go to zero just for the chance to change the system. How are you gonna beat me when I'm that intolerant?
Yeah.
You can't.
No, I think you're right.
There's thousands of me. There's millions of me.
Yeah.
It's not just me.
Yeah, and everyone would be better served if not only you and whatever handful or number of people were impenetrable as well, but like that this kind of, well, like you said, the personal responsibility piece applied to your finances, your financial sovereignty, and maybe other areas. But the more you kind of refine that whole operation, then the more independent you can be. So like the ability to resist, and like I don't like invoking the dynamic of like the people versus the government resistance unnecessarily, like when we're not really there. But it's needless to say, like you don't even have the chance to resist any form of governance that you may think is unjust or for whatever reason disagree with, if every aspect of your life is entirely dependent on it. Your financial, what you use to, your food, your energy, like literally everything. And so I totally agree with what you were just saying, but I will like defend the previous generation a little bit, just because, I mean, of course they had many opportunities to maybe be more independent than they were. But I was speaking with Ben from BTC Sessions yesterday. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He produced a lot of YouTube content. But we were talking about, it's always fascinating to me the individual change, and as a result of that, kind of the emergent social change that occurs for, as we've been discussing, people that get involved in Bitcoin. And he was kind of describing himself before as kind of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but like typical sort of millennial shtick, right? Like just kind of spent money going out with friends and maybe on kind of frivolous stuff that wasn't that important, consumption, etc. And then obviously the changes that occurred, with Bitcoin. And I made the suggestion for the first time, it just kind of popped into my mind, but maybe prior to this phenomenon, like our generation, well, I don't want to assume your age, but let's say the millennial generation, like we're a bit hopeless because couldn't looked out on the world and saw to a certain degree the truth of the situation, was kind of put off by it, or saw all that the many ways in which they do not have independence, and didn't really see a clear track out of that situation, and as a result became kind of like apathetic and cynical. And
apathetic, cynical, hedonistic,
right,
living only for today,
yeah,
not thinking about tomorrow, not planning for your future. The amount of people I know in our generation, I'm around your age, I'm 30. The amount of people I know in our generation that have no savings, no plan for savings, no ability to save, no ambition. It's crazy. It
yeah,
seems like everybody else in the world is in a race to occupy the victim position,
right,
which is a categorical race to the bottom.
yeah,
And Bitcoiners are going the opposite direction. And, a lot of people too, people that listen to Jordan Peterson's message, these people are becoming more responsible, more self-sovereign. And that's a race to occupy the top,
yeah,
which is a fundamentally better race, because that race drives human progress.
for sure, for sure. But I just think like this, the emergence of Bitcoin is, again, one of the many reasons why it's becoming so popular and such a cultural phenomenon. Is like, I think for a lot of people it is now like a pathway. They're like, and not just to make money and be financially sovereign or whatever, but I don't know, I think they look out on the landscape, and whereas before they saw kind of no means of changing this gargantuan monolithic system that kind of trapped them, and now seeing some light and being like, oh no, this can change things, and if I want to be a part of this, I need to change myself, to make the most of it, I guess. And
Bitcoin changes us more than we'll ever change Bitcoin. It's kind of like Texas. Like, Texas is the last state in the union that changes you before you could change it. Suddenly you moved out to Texas and you have fucking cowboy boots on, you have a shotgun in the back of your truck. Bitcoin is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And it's why I never got into the quote unquote crypto space as a whole, which I think is just Bitcoin and a bunch of scams. No offense to anybody. Actually, tons of offense. Fuck all your shit. Fuck all your shit coins. Sorry about it. I just don't see anything that's an improvement on Satoshi's vision. And I just flat out mean that. I haven't seen a goddamn thing. Yeah. I don't know anybody who's smart who sees anything either.
Yeah.
The minute I see it, I'm happy to look into it, but haven't seen it yet.
Well,
don't think I will.
It's also the case that, so much is being put out there. And for me, we only have so much time in the day, especially to, investigate technical sort of things. And is there a need to go looking for something else? Like, there's probably some legitimate projects in certain categories out there. I don't know, but is there a need? Like, I think the problem that Bitcoin is solving, and the evident positive impact that it's having in so many different domains, is like, we can like run with this one for quite a while. I think it's got a lot of road left, that probably it's best to devote most of the attention to this, because if this can get established properly, then man, that's a lot of upside to be working with. I think, maybe it's a bit greedy to be wanting any more than that for now.
Oh, totally. And the Bitcoin, like, people, okay, listen, Bitcoiners are greedy, like all humans. We're greedy. Do you think that I'm not greedy? No, I want as many Bitcoins as I can possibly get my hands on.
Of course.
Right. And, the beauty of Bitcoin's design is that it hijacks our greed. This is one of the beautiful things about Satoshi's entire system is, mining is hijacking greed for benefit of the system, which is the first time you've ever seen that in an open, decentralized computer software system. And
greed is good, baby.
Yeah, don't be short-term greedy.
Yeah.
Be long-term greedy. Don't do some shitty pre-mine and put out some crap coin and dump it on a bunch of people. And dude, because I'm the Bitcoin guy, I get asked to help out with various things, right? And I'll tell you a story that's going to break your fucking heart, because it broke my heart.
Okay.
There was this poor Colombian, my friend's maid. I think she's like 42 or 43. And she had just come to this country. I forget how long ago. And she got shilled on one of these ICO scams during the 2017 boom.
Oh man.
Right. And it was basically just a couple of guys that grifted her. And they took $40,000 off her. I cannot remember the name of the coin. I wish I could, because I would call out these fuckers. They grifted her, and this is the worst. I looked at the market cap of the coin. The market cap of the coin was $40,000. So I'm essentially assuming she was the only person they were able to get with the scam, and they got her, and she has almost no recourse.
Fuck.
Right? Yeah. So it's
brutal.
I take a really hard line stance against this kind of thing. And Ethereum is just that on steroids, times a million. You know, it gave everybody the capacity to do their own scams on top of it.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, with Ethereum, obviously, if any other coin has a claim, I mean, it's number two. But like I said, for me, Bitcoin really ticks a lot of the boxes that were existing boxes for me prior to Bitcoin coming along. And then it also adds a bunch of boxes that make me super excited. And it does it like I'm so, I guess, confident in what it represents that like I have no compulsion to search outside of it. You know what I mean? Like
man, fuck Ethereum and fuck Vitalik and fuck everybody that's associated with that project. They're slowly unwinding that scam, because if they did it all at once, they would go to fucking jail. So they're going to do it as slow as they possibly can. They're going to keep kicking the can down the road with ETH 2.0 and we're doing staking, we're doing plasma. They're throwing the kitchen sink approach at this thing, and everybody's too stupid to figure out what's going on, and it takes too much time to refute their bullshit. So they're getting away with it, and it pisses me off.
But do you think it's that's their intention, or they're actually trying to build something they're just like way off base? You know,
Vitalik is too smart not to know what he's doing. Like, he is smart.
But so you think he's a massive scam artist?
Yeah, 100%. Biggest one in the space.
Really?
Or maybe Justin's son Tron, who's like a retarded version of Vitalik.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I don't pay enough attention to it to have any opinion one way or the other, but he certainly doesn't.
Yeah, there's nothing substantive being built on Ethereum, and they keep switching their narratives. And I don't know if you've noticed, but now they're taking Bitcoin's narratives and trying to graft them onto themselves. You know, they're saying they're a programmable store of money, and Ethereum's Austrian economics. It's like, no, you're not.
I saw that someone tweeted that today, right? Or I think
it was that guy Ryan Adams, who's a fuckface.
I thought it was a troll or something like that.
No, I think he's serious. I think he's actually co-opting.
Wow.
He's at least partially serious. They're serious about the programmable store of value part.
Right.
The rest of it is probably a troll.
Yeah.
You know.
What do you like as it stands today? What about Bitcoin is, you know, because as Bitcoin grows and you grow along with it, like every so often you're kind of, the thing you're excited about in it maybe morphs and changes, but also kind of like your little secret about it changes too. Like the thing that you like kind of aha in your mind that you didn't, like an unlock, I guess, happens every so often. Like where are you at with that kind of dynamic today?
I think some of the interesting things that are happening are, do you know about Steve Barber at Upstream Data and what they're doing?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's
Super
really
cool.
Interesting. They're using gas that would otherwise be flared into the atmosphere to produce Bitcoin mining, which basically makes Bitcoin this huge energy arbitrage engine, or the world's greatest virtual battery, however you want to think about it.
Yeah.
So I think as we see more and more money pile into Bitcoin, it's going to increase the technologies that we know and depend on. Like, I think we'll see huge gains in energy. And I think we'll see huge gains in, I think Bitcoin might actually re-kick Moore's Law into effect. So we're going to see these companies like IBM and, you know, the big energy players start to compete for Bitcoin infrastructure. And that's really exciting to me. And I hope it pans out the way I think it might pan out and kick off a new industrial revolution. Which would be super, super awesome, you know.
I actually just today was listening to Steve on some podcast. Forget the name. The host's name was Brady. Sorry for that.
Oh, Citizen Bitcoin.
Yes, yeah. He, of course. So what their product is awesome because they're just taking, you know, basically waste energy and turning it into value. But, you know, also the use case for kind of mobile Bitcoin mining is now like all these renewable or let's say green energy resources, like a hydro dam, for example, or they can be built with the assumption that they're going to run at full capacity as much as possible, and then whenever instead of having to be built for some percentage of that, right? Like maybe they only assume they're going to be at full capacity 95% of the time, 80%, whatever. Now they can just like, what is the capacity of this site, whether it's sun or hydro or whatever, and just build it out, and whatever the excess is, just mine Bitcoin with it. It's amazing, and obviously that's going to have a accelerating effect on renewable energy. I would imagine.
Totally, and I'm always getting excited about new stuff in Bitcoin, but to be honest with you, man, nothing excites me more than thinking about poor people across the world being able to steal, or being able to store their time and energy so that it's not stolen from them by these fucking vampires, basically, that are running our system, and just outright steal. And that thought makes me warm and fuzzy inside and makes me want to keep going, because you should have the ability to save and to plan. And this is global. Like, if we as Americans are feeling the pinch, think about how it is to be. I mean, I've seen you travel around and you're in Thailand and everything. I haven't done a lot of world traveling myself, but I know how it is. And, this has got to be, it's so massive. I can't even really comprehend what it's going to do to the third world.
Yeah. And I was speaking with my girlfriend tonight, and I'm always yapping to her about Bitcoin, as all of us probably are. But, and she's receptive, but she hasn't caught the virus. But I was asking her, like, just check on, Google, Google, or get on the app, the podcast app. Like, are any people in Thailand, are there any like podcasts, YouTube channels, that kind of stuff in Thailand, in Thai language about Bitcoin? And she got on for a while and she was like, not really. Like, this one guy, someone had an episode of a finance podcast that was on Bitcoin. It was like a couple other things, but I'm like, holy shit. Like, it's hard to imagine that, it's 80 million people, 80 million plus people in this country. And like you said, they're probably they stand to gain far more from it than, people in fully developed Western economies. But there's still not that much awareness or penetration.
Yeah, so there's a thing that's become popular to say that, we're all LARPing on Twitter when we talk about, banking the unbanked and all this kind of stuff. And, crypto people are LARPing. Like, that's just how it is. I feel like Bitcoin is the only thing that's going to really help people by giving them a productive store of value. Who gives a shit about remittances? If you can't trust your government and you can't store your time and energy, what fucking good is a remittance?
Yeah, totally. And when you were saying that earlier, like you said, what money is supposed to be is a method of storing excess time, labor, energy expenditure, right? And whether that's excess energy expenditure from a hydro dam or excess energy expenditure from a human being, it's pretty much the same thing. And prior to Bitcoin, if we could say that we're trying to store that, let's say our time and energy expenditure, this kind of ethereal sort of idea, we're trying to store it in something. We've been storing it in containers that like are super leaky, right? They leak over time. They leak a lot of value. And what Bitcoin seems to be is like an airtight container, so that if you have excess expenditure of time and energy resources, then this is the ideal container to put it in, so that when you want to retrieve it later, it's exactly as it was in terms of, it's replicating what you put into it, and obviously, if not more, based on market dynamics,
Right. And not only is it the ideal container, it's an infinite container. It can store as much value as we can put in it, which is just a truly mind-blowing thought. And this is like Trace Mayer's thing about how Bitcoin is a black hole on the world's balance sheet. And it is. It's just eating fiat currency. And the more they print, the more goes into the black hole.
Yeah.
And at this point, we shouldn't talk about Bitcoin as being inevitable, because we should operate, still considering it fragile, so that we're defensive over it.
Right.
But man, I got to tell you, Bitcoiner to Bitcoiner, it feels pretty fucking inevitable.
I know, man. Like, from every angle, like every time you think about it, you're like, how does this thing get stopped? Like, if it keeps working, the incentive structure is there, and the attacks usually make it stronger, and the game theory is going to play out on every single level. Like, yeah, how does it stop?
I took a personality assessment one time that said that I was 98th percentile disagreeable, which means that if there's 100 people in the room, there's only 2 people more disagreeable than I am. So I came into Bitcoin super skeptical. I mean, as skeptical as you could possibly be. And every time I keep asking myself, for 5 years, I've been asking myself now, how's this thing going to fail?
That's what I ask everybody that I interview about. It's like, how does it die? What's the main vulnerability? Like, tell me.
Right.
And I don't get a lot of great answers, to be honest.
No, it's like killing a language or killing a song. Like you just can't kill it. It lives in the hearts and minds of the participants of the network, not only in code, but also on the wetware that we run within ourselves.
Yeah.
So I mean, good luck. Fucking try it.
Well, it makes me,
that's what I got.
It makes me wonder if, because I used to think about it like this is going to be a bumpy ride, and it's all fun and games until like the real showdown, and then then it's going to be serious, and like the memes and all that kind of stuff might be tempered, and it might be a more serious endeavor. But the other side of me thinks like anyone who seriously looks at this and is like kind of preparing the troops to attack, preparing their army to attack, is like, will they not see that it's kind of like a fruitless endeavor? And will they not like decide that capitulating early is the best approach to mitigating their loss,
Dude,
against other attackers?
Bitcoin always surprises you to the positive. I mean, if you would have told me when I first got into this back in late 2014 that not only would I have my original investment paid back to me in the form of a dividend, Bcash, right? But that 5 years from now, I would be seeing fifth pillar politicians who clearly fucking own Bitcoin and probably hang out on Bitcoin Twitter, talk about it in the halls of US Congress.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's insane. So like, yeah, this thing is going to go beyond our wildest imagination. There was, I forgot who said it. I think maybe it was Nick Body. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said that, how before the internet came about, all the world's information, and when the internet came about, now we generate more than that information pre-internet every second. Bitcoin will generate more value than the world has ever seen before every second.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
Think about how mind-blowing that thought is, right? Like, I don't even know if we've seen Bitcoin go up yet. I think we've only seen the dollar go down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one of the mind games that Bitcoin plays with you, because like I mentioned that I remember it hitting parity with the US dollar, and like I wasn't looking at it from an investment perspective at that point, fucking unfortunately, but at every time you think like, oh man, I missed it. It went from $1 to 30, or like it went from 100 to 1,000, or like, and you're like, I missed the big gains. I missed it. And you obviously you hear people say that over the last 2 years, and today. I mean, Peter Schiff said it in his recent chat with Pomp. He was like, I think I missed it. It's like, man, what are you going to be saying when it's $1 million?
That's Matt Odell's phrase: "Stay humble and stack sats." That's the stay humble part. Right. You have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself to get into Bitcoin. You really do.
That's
because you have to check
right.
yourself.
Ego will burn you in Bitcoin. It's burned me several times, but
dude, when I got in back in the day, the guys who got in at a nickel and a quarter and $2 and $20, I was so jealous.
Yeah.
And this was back in the low 200s. And now I post like buys from that time period on Twitter sometimes just for fun, and people are like, "Man, don't even show me this. Like, fuck you. Like, it's it's jealousy inspiring." And here's the crazy part: your buys from 20,000 will be jealousy inspiring soon enough.
Right. Well, I was just gonna say, like, when you post those screenshots of stacking like sats, 0.1, a 0.01, something like that. And the people are going to look back at that and be like, I can't believe you got it for that price, man. And and today people are just like, okay, fine, fair enough. He's on a regular stack. It's not a tremendous amount, but it's just it's funny.
Part of the reason I do that is because like I've come out and I've told people and I've been like, listen, I have fucking billions of sats. Like, it is what it is. And people are always like, you shouldn't say that, man. That's bad OPSEC. And I'm like, here's the deal. I want the people on Twitter who are following me to know that I'm a real person who has real conviction, who's putting in a shitload of real money to this thing. And, your favorite influencer has less than one Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these guys, I listen to them talk. I've been in the space a long time. I saw their brand, quote unquote, pop up, a year and a half ago. And you can't trust what they're saying. It's like Mike Bitstein's article, Everyone's a Scammer. Everyone wants your Bitcoins. This is the most scarce resource in the universe. We've never seen anything like this. It's a once in a species event, like Trace Mayer says. Like everyone is trying to steal from you, okay? Yeah. Except for the quote unquote toxic assholes called the maximalists who are telling you to
be careful.
Be careful and treat everybody like a scammer.
Right.
But we're the toxic ones. It's insane.
Yeah.
I love it though.
Yeah. And what you just mentioned, man, like I think about that often is, and maybe not once in a species. I don't know how to assess that, but if we can say like we've had a more or less a gold monetary standard for the human civilization up until now, right? Notwithstanding the recent fiat fiasco, but human civilization, kind of has been using gold in various places for a long time. And how momentous of a shift it is if we're living in the time of the shift, and obviously we would probably contend that we are, but like that is, once in a 10,000 year sort of occurrence. I mean, fuck. Yeah. Just to be alive at that time is so cool.
What's interesting? I have a different perspective on it. Well, similar perspective, but my perspective is we're living in a blip, a manipulative blip. And the last 100 years of centralization, maybe 150 years, have been a real freak occurrence in the human species. Like, if you look at like some of the things we're seeing, like in news media, for instance, before the last 100 years of centralization, yellow journalism ruled the day. Like the fake news that we're seeing now, we think that's a new phenomenon. No, that's as old as human time. That's since Gutenberg invented the printing press. And even before that, like people like to gossip.
Yeah,
that's just one of the facts of our species. But because newspapers all had regional monopolies, they wanted to protect their regional monopolies. So what did they do? They printed facts, and they tried not to make, they tried not to rock the boat politically either direction. Mm-hmm. So they would be very quote unquote fair and balanced down the middle. And, we were probably getting propaganda from the government as part of that, but it did seem like things were a little more factually based. And now we're seeing a reversion back to yellow journalism, and people are freaking out about it.
Yeah.
But, we're going to see a lot of these shifts, and some of them are going to be positive. Some of them are going to be negative, and I think Bitcoin is the big positive driving force.
Yeah.
That we're seeing.
Well, anytime you have this kind of change, I mean, things get shaken up, and it's going to be turbulent because you're shaking up existing structures and status quo and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm just crazy grateful to be alive during this time, and this is it's not even tangential; it's just off base, but it came to my head. I'm sure you've heard of the Bitcoin time traveler, right?
Oh yeah.
I sometimes like, again, when I'm getting lost in my own mind about this stuff, I'm like, what if that's real? What if like somehow like this thing, and you may know that it's not real, or maybe that's like been debunked. I'm not actually seriously suggesting it's real, but like I play with myself. I'm like, what if, like what if things get so fucking crazy, like that turns out to be actually real?
Well, it's like, what if we start using block times as the basis of all foundational time? You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like things get really weird really quickly when you go into a Bitcoin world. And by weird, I mean great.
Yeah.
Like we come from shitty times. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
I think we all came of age during the financial collapse. A lot of us in the space who were in the millennial generation, which is a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it was psychologically scarring to us. I know it was to me. And, any escape from that system where I could just, it's so funny. People, we went into the most volatile system that we could find. But I think we all believe over time it'll decrease in volatility, et cetera, et cetera. But
Sure, sure.
any escape from that fundamentally broken system was like, yes, a lifeboat.
Yeah.
I've been looking for this.
And it's
Yeah.
just another, I mentioned kind of the mystique of Bitcoin by having an anonymous creator, and that makes it feel right. Just the whatever you want to call it, the fate or the appropriateness or the necessity of it emerging at precisely that time. It's just it makes the story so beautiful. It's going to be retold someday, and like people are going to, kids in the classroom are going to just be wide-eyed and be like, whoa, like, they're going to be told all the kind of like cool and elements of this story, and they're going to be like, that's so cool. It would have been so awesome to be around then.
Isn't that interesting? It's almost like this is the modern day version of manna from heaven. It's almost like a gift from God.
Right. I mean, it has that mystique.
Yeah. That's why I think that, we should all have our Spartacus moment if they ever do unmask Satoshi, and we should just all be like, I'm Satoshi. No, I'm Satoshi. No, I'm Satoshi. Because we should keep that mystique going forever.
I agree.
We don't,
but we
don't need to know who Satoshi is.
It seems like most people in the space feel that way, right? Like I don't hear on a lot of podcasts or anything like that, like people asking like kind of OGs in the space, like, who do you think Satoshi is? Like that seems like a kind of taboo question to ask.
Yeah, we all have a short list of who we think it
sure,
is.
But we don't kind of publicly question people,
Right. And we kind of don't badger those people who we think it is.
Yeah, I think I asked it to the first time I ever spoke with Bobby Lee. I think I asked him that time. It was in 2015, and he said, I think I know, but I'm going to keep it to myself. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, cool.
I feel the same way. I have my own theory, but I'm not going to share it.
Yeah. So where do you go to, like, when you want to learn more about Bitcoin? Do you just kind of see what's being published on crypto Twitter, or do you like have resources that you go to kind of enhance your understanding and stuff?
Yeah, man, I think Bitcoin Twitter is the ultimate resource. Crypto Twitter is a cesspool full of morons.
Sorry,
so I wouldn't go there.
Bitcoin Twitter.
But I would follow Bitcoin only people in order to get a real deep understanding of what's going on. Crypto Twitter widely is just people trying to unload their bags on you.
Right.
So why go there to get a shitty infomercial pitch?
Yeah.
But yeah, all the developments happen on Bitcoin Twitter, and they used to happen, in the forums and everything, and it's so much easier than it was back in like late 2014, early 2015 when I was getting in. You had to, go through the forums and try and, think through this stuff. And I would spend hours reading, Reddit or Bitcoin Talk or whatever it was. And, annoying my wife and being like, well,
burst in the room and be like, do you know what just happened?
And he said that. Yeah. Yeah, but it's such a thought virus, man. It just, it's like when you hit me up about doing a podcast, I was like, fuck yeah, a chance to talk about Bitcoin. Like, let's do it. It's all I ever think about, and I'm surrounded by people in real life who don't give a shit.
Yeah, it really is, man. And like I've been saying this whole discussion about, when I have episodes of fantasizing about it, which is often, it's like, there's so many different like folds and contours and things to it, and it's like an endless, I mean, if you get off on that kind of stuff and thinking about, that and the technology and social change and individual change, just playing with that thing and seeing how it affects and could affect and all of those things, it's endless.
Oh my God. It's, I think I felt like I missed the internet, and now I feel like I'm so glad I was born exactly when I was born.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here and be experiencing this. And I honestly think what we're doing is historic, and people are going to think that's grandiose. But I think people are going to look back, like they won't look back on my account because I keep getting deleted, but they'll look back on a lot of these conversations on Bitcoin Twitter, and they're going to be like, oh my God, this is when it happened. This is like, it's as though you could read what Socrates was saying in the public square. That's what it'll be like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. I love it.
Yeah, me too. All right, man, let me hit you with a couple rapid fires that I got written down, then I'll let you go.
Beautiful.
If you had to explain to like your grandmother, elderly person, 80-year-old, what Bitcoin was, Or if you have done so, what do you usually say, or what would you say?
Bitcoin is digital gold.
Okay. Uh. How long after you first heard of it did you start learning about it or purchase it? I think you touched on that earlier.
3 years, which
Really?
fucking was a lot of wasted time.
Oh, man, I'm with you, man. I think I was even longer. But so how did you first hear about it? Do you even remember?
So I heard about it from Duncan Trussell on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Really?
Because Duncan Trussell was talking about people buying drugs on Silk Road in Bitcoins, and then me and my friend were like, let's buy some drugs on the Silk Road, and we never got around to it because we were scared about sending drugs through the mail,
Yeah.
because that's a federal offense. So I didn't do it. I didn't look into it, and that was a real blown opportunity. And then when I heard about it, he came back to me at the bar and was like, hey man, that Bitcoin thing, it hit $1,300. I was despondent.
Yeah.
I spent the rest of my night nursing my beer and just thinking about what could have been. And then, that hangover from that experience took me about a year and a half to get over.
Yeah.
So I think
that,
everybody needs three or four touches before they finally get involved and invest in Bitcoin.
And when you finally took the plunge, was it purely out of speculation because it had such a run and you thought it could do that again, or were you starting to kind of see fundamentals?
I'll tell you a fun story. So we went to the Christmas of 2014. We went to the casino to play blackjack, and I was pretty drunk, and I took a Xanax, and I was playing kind of lights out, meaning just no inhibitory control of my neocortex. And I went in with $200, and I left with $5,000. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm still gambling, or I feel like I want to still gamble. And so when I got a Coinbase account and I bought $5,000 worth of Bitcoin, which at the time was, I don't know, that night. At the time, or no, it took a few days to get the money in, but it was at the time I bought it, that was 23 Bitcoins. So the crazy thing, what's the price? So I went in with $200 to the casino. Today, those 23 Bitcoins are worth what, like $250,000 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
That's a $200,000 to $250,000 return. I just had to stop by the casino on the way there. But yeah, when I put my money in, I was like, my father is gonna fucking kill me if I don't have any reasoning behind this investment. So I went and started doing my research, and that's when I had my holy shit moment. But yeah, it came from just a wild
that is so funny, man,
of speculation.
Fuck. I often think about those early days, and I guess a lot of people were in our situation where we wanted to buy drugs, and that's how we first heard about it. But but all those people that were on the Silk Road, buyers and sellers, that just by default ended up when that got shut down, just had their bags, but their bags were of Bitcoin, and these were I guess people that wanted to somewhat hedonistic, somewhat expand their minds, somewhat entrepreneurial, risk on sort of people, yep. And now they're probably sitting pretty damn pretty, as a result of that couple year endeavor in their lives.
And what goes to the whole thing about how Bitcoin changes you, because it's like, now I would fucking never gamble my Bitcoins. They're the most precious resource in the world to me,
Yeah.
Like I don't take as much risks anymore. I sort of work my day job and I continue to stack sats and, just buy Bitcoin. And I'm totally different from when I first entered this journey. It's the true hero's journey,
Yeah, and I like your post when you do the screenshots, because and the stack sats meme is so great, because every time I do it, I'm like, I feel like kind of cloak and dagger ish, like people, oh man, like people are letting I can still do this, like people are letting me do this, like I'm not competing with anyone really to do this right now.
Yeah. Well, this is why I think that, a lot of Bitcoiners right now are still working their day jobs and accumulating. And I think after we see the next big run up, the next bull run we all, I think, feel is going to occur or we're in it now, and it's going to be the next few years. After that, I think we're going to unlock a lot of people's energy and time. Like, I know I'm probably going to quit what I'm doing and go full time at Bitcoin and, create Bitcoin businesses and different ways to get Bitcoin, because it's not gonna, if the price of a Bitcoin's $300,000, it's not gonna be as easy to stack sats,
Yeah, No, I agree, man. And
Right.
I've thought about that too. And I'm super excited about, yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, kind of unlocking potential creativity and stuff when people are kind of relieved from, immediate or midterm concerns, or maybe maybe forever concerns about
Totally.
finances, and they can really just dive into whatever, sets them on fire. Um,
Totally.
Bitcoin's biggest vulnerability, if it has one.
Bitcoin's biggest vulnerability is, man, that's hard to answer because I don't think it has any. I use the standard boilerplate thing that everybody says, which is, maybe there's some bug that we haven't seen in the code, yada yada. But I don't believe that's true. I think
Yeah,
that we've tested the shit out of the code. We might get a bug on an upgrade, and that could be a big vulnerability. But we can always port the UTXO set if something happens. So I don't think you can kill Bitcoin. I don't think it has any major vulnerabilities left. I mean, this thing has been living in the wild of the internet for a decade, and people have been attacking it from every which way. You don't think the NSA has tried to attack Bitcoin? Of course they have,
right.
right? I mean, you don't think people at MIT have tried to attack Bitcoin? Of course they have. The smartest people in the world have tried to break this system, and nobody can break it yet.
Yeah,
Maybe quantum is a thing, but I think the quantum incentive, because Bitcoin's incentives are so powerful, will be to mine
right, right.
quantumly,
I
instead
mean,
of attack the
it's
system.
hard to imagine that there's an incentive to attack beyond like, a state actor reason, right? Like
Yeah.
any
And even then you have the prisoner's dilemma of the states are not going to all coordinate with each other,
right,
you
right.
know?
Um,
So they'd have to all coordinate in unison to kill Bitcoin. And, maybe they could shut off the global internet for like a week, but we have the Blockstream satellite. So what are they going to do?
yeah,
Nothing,
yeah. I
you know?
agree. I agree. Do you think central banks will ever buy Bitcoin for reserves, and if
Yeah,
so,
I
when?
think
Or
they're buying. I think they're now. I think
you,
it's happening right now.
you think it's
The
happening?
Fed doesn't have to. The Fed doesn't have to release their minutes to us for 4 years. So I think the Fed is buying. I think the IMF is buying. I think they're starting to buy.
I mean, they fucking should. If you can print as much money as you
I know, right?
want, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, and they're definitely not buying over exchanges. They're probably doing private deals with big whales and things.
Right.
So if the Fed is buying in a significant way, we're going to see it. We're going to see it in the price.
Yeah.
So right now, it's probably not significant. It's probably they're doing some very minor buys across the board, but I think it's happening right now.
Right.
I would bet, and I bet you the people inside the Fed personally hold Bitcoin themselves. They have to.
Interesting. Biggest mistake you've made with Bitcoin?
Selling any ever for any reason.
Yeah.
Early on back in 2015, I spent a few because there was this meme of like spend and replace, and I would be like, oh, I'll spend it and replace it in 6 months, and then the price would rise, and I didn't get to replace it. So I probably could have had my hands on 10 more Bitcoins than I currently do,
Yeah.
which is $100,000. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a big mistake.
All those mistakes sting, man. I mean, I wasn't even thinking in terms of spend replace at that point. I was just like, wow, this new internet money is so cool. Like, I'm going to buy this with it and send it here. And,
Right.
it was just way more frivolous with it, or, like loose with it than I should have been, and that anyone would be today, I think. But, at that time,
totally.
It was like, the intrigue of just having a new form of money under your control that like people were actually accepting, and you could send it somewhere and like it would be there instantaneously, and you could, I don't know if it's a piece of software or, hardware wallet or whatever it is.
I think the other mistake was probably not stacking more vigorously back in 2015.
Well, sure.
Because I was still, being safe, and I was like, I'm going to put a responsible amount of money in this. And I could have just been like, fuck it. I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to sell everything I got. I'm going all in.
Yeah. Now every penny, right?
Now I'm much more reckless, although I still, it hurts my soul as a hardcore maximalist to say that I have any exposure to the equities and bonds market, but I do, because, I'm not willing to make my family poor on the off chance I'm wrong.
Right.
So,
well, fair enough.
Yeah.
How have you changed personally as a result of interacting with Bitcoin? I don't know if we touched on that yet.
Much lower time preference. I'm here's an interesting one. I'm much more intolerant. Much more intolerant. because I don't have to listen to these conversations anymore politically where people are talking about, trying to occupy the victim position. And it's like, well, I'm a bigger victim than you. I'm a bigger victim than you.
Yeah.
I don't have to have any stupid conversations anymore. And I just find them to be so tedious and time consuming as somebody who is exiting the system and has exited the system to even try and change the system from within.
Yeah.
It seems like at this point, at least in America, we're all just intent on, our generation is going to get in there. Those of us that don't. Yeah, those of us that don't get into Bitcoin, they're just going to start printing money, and they're going to inherit the ash pile, and it's not something I want to be a part of or think about or discuss with anybody. So when I run up against people who do think that way or are still entrenched in that system, I can be a little intolerant to their views.
When I hear all that stuff on that's going on these days with socialism, this and there's just so much ridiculous social related things going on. I wish, and this is obviously just my opinion, but like I wish people knew the extent to which like most of the problems that they're talking about and that they're so opposed to and that they so passionately think need changing, most of them are like largely affected by, if not directly caused by, the form of like the monetary system. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like
central bank policy. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like if you don't have to cut down every like weed as it pops up, you just use a different soil and you're good. You don't have to fight a million battles because you can't win that. And it's exhausting and it's no way to live. But if you just
sometimes I get despondent about that because I think are these people who are just wallowing in their own victimhood, are they going to attack and approach self-sovereignty with the same rigor that all of us are?
Probably not.
And then probably not. But then we're going to have to deal with them at some point. When they've made bad decisions for 40 years, and you're going to be like, well, great. Now you expect me to take care of you?
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a bit of a downer.
It's a bit of a downer. Every time I think about the world at large, instead of what's going on in the circular economy and Bitcoin, I'm just like, oh, really?
Yeah.
They want to give each other, UBI, or they want to, everybody, I don't know if you watched any of the Democratic debates, but the crux of the entire debates were just like, you're racist, I'm racist, everything is racist, this country is built on racism, and everybody should have free shit. And it's like, okay, right. No, how about no to all of that?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I watch it, I oscillate, like it. Usually I'm more entertained by it than saddened by it, just because I left caring about that shit like a long time ago. And so now I just get on to be like, how fucked up is shit now? Like I get to hear it in the flesh. Like these are presidential candidates, and it's always been a dog and pony show. But now it's like, whoa, like literally a candidate is running on a platform of, elect me president, I will give you free cash. Here's a picture of it on my Twitter. It's yours. You vote for me. Money, money, money. It's like, wow, we're at that. Totally. We're at that place where like it's so overt. It's like, vote for me. I give you money. Finish. Like.
Well, we were talking about simplistic allegories and mythical tales and everything. I mean, one of the simplest ones is Aesop's fable of the ants and the grasshoppers, and I feel like we are us as Bitcoiners, the people on the path to self-sovereignty. We're the ants. We're like, hey, winter is coming. We're gonna Game of Thrones style ants. We're like, winter is coming. You know what I mean? We're gonna work during the summer, and we're gonna store our time and our value and our energy in this thing. You guys should be doing the same. And they're like, nah, it's fine. Summer's gonna be here forever.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you're a person with a strong moral matrix, you do have to help out the grasshopper when they inevitably come back to you and say, hey, man, let me in, give me some food. And we're going to have to be our brother's keeper in this situation. But I'm not going to like it. I'm going to do it, but it's going to be tough love.
Begrudgingly.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy? You may have just answered this, but what do you enjoy the least about this space, like Bitcoin, etc., if anything?
What do I enjoy the least? I enjoy all the shitcoinery. I mean, I disenjoy the shitcoinery. It really upsets me to see people getting taken advantage of by people like Vitalik or people like the Tron organization or whatever shitcoin of the moment it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to see people. You can't hodl anything but Bitcoin. You can only hodl Bitcoin, right? You can't hodl fiat. Can't hodl shitcoins. Yeah, Hodl, altcoin, and whatever. They're all shit coins.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is it. Bitcoin is the scarcest resource in the universe. So anybody who's telling you the opposite of that is trying to steal your Bitcoin. And that shit, it just offends me. I wish I could stop it, but I can't. And it's like the same grasshopper analogy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, these people are gonna have to get wrecked. And I wish I could prevent it, but I can't.
Yeah. And the question is, and I don't really like it, that's why I'm stuttering, but like the question is, at what price would you permanently sell over 75% of your Bitcoin? I'm getting the vibe, but
never.
right.
Never.
But so does it just become one of those things where like you basically hold it for as long as possible, and then if you have a necessity, or if you want to spend to support yourself so that you can have that freedom that you mentioned earlier, that's pretty much the only scenario under which you'd liquidate?
I will never divest myself from my Bitcoin until the S curve has finished and we're looking at a slowed fiat is dying, and we're in hyper Bitcoinization, and Bitcoin is taken over. And then I would start looking at productive investments to put my Bitcoin into. But no, I'm not gonna be selling for some worthless paper anytime soon. And I'm not going to be selling for any consumption-based decisions. Like, I have a house that's paid for, I have cars that are paid for. What do I need a mansion for? What what do I need? I don't need any of that. Like, I'm not really in this for Lambos or whatever the fuck. I'm in this for changing the entire world's economy and the entire structure of everything.
Yeah.
I'm passing on all my Bitcoin to the next generation.
That's awesome.
Is basically my answer.
I love it. Have you ever, I have to ask this, have you ever purchased other coins?
Yes, unfortunately. So
can you divulge which ones?
I have. I traded Ethereum all during 16 and 17 to make more Bitcoin.
Right.
And I feel mildly icky about that, but it was just free money. It was there for the take.
Right.
Shout out to the dumbass who bought my Ethereum at $980. Because you're the real MVP, bro. You held that bag all the way
down. Okay. Do you believe there are any reliable ways at spotting a paradigm shift? If so, what are they? Kind of what we've been talking about, but I'm fascinated by, I mean, we were just talking about the dynamic of the people that kind of can't see outside the status quo, and as a result, don't get to reap the benefits. Are there any ways of spotting a paradigm shift?
I've described this before. Do you remember that movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the movie, he knows all the answers because of his lived experience. So I think a lot of us that got in early were like Slumdog Millionaire types, where something just aligned for us and then it all clicked. Everybody's going to have to come to that in their own way, in their own shape, in their own form.
Yeah.
And I don't quite know how it goes for everybody, because it's an internal process,
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a morning routine? If so, what is it?
Yeah, I'm basically just like every other douchebag on Twitter, just like, hey man, I take cold showers and I fast and I drink just black coffee cold because I'm a real man. I do all of that.
Okay. How do you define? Also,
checking Bitcoin Twitter and fighting with CNBC host, which is what I did this morning. That's a daily ritual.
Who?
I was going after Joe Weisenthal this morning because he was saying the halving is priced in, and I was like, listen up, fuckface. We have informational asymmetry here. Okay, not everybody knows what you know. Just because you know it doesn't mean everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And even if they know it, they don't necessarily believe it. Ultimately, the halvings are going to be priced in, but this one's not.
Yeah.
So I had to correct him.
Yeah,
with some salty language.
Fair enough. I saw some question. I think it was him. I saw some pretty questionable tweets from him, I guess last week or something, but I can't remember the nature of it. So, moving on. How do you define success?
I define success. If you're going to get power, right, and money's power, you're going to only have two options, what you can do with that power. You can use that power to help people, or you can use that power to hurt people, to make their lives worse. So you can basically make people's lives better with power or make people's lives worse with power. My definition of success is people who attain power and then use it to make people's lives better.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah.
All right. Last little thing here. Bear with me. This is a word association, so I'll just fire it out and you fire it back. All right.
Okay.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Genius.
Government.
Fuckers.
Hash rate.
The best.
The individual.
Is key.
Security.
Paramount.
Stack sats.
Fuck yeah.
Fiat currency.
Dog shit.
Altcoins.
Dog shit on top of dog shit.
Pizza.
Oh, the best.
Libra.
Dog shit on top of dog shit on top of dog shit.
Gold.
Worthless relic. Barbarous relic.
And Bitcoin.
The greatest fucking thing in the goddamn universe.
Well, man, I can't think of a better way to finish off our conversation than calling Bitcoin the greatest thing in the goddamn universe. So, man,
it's true.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But man, thanks. We've been doing this for 90 minutes now, so I appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure you got a lot more better things to be at, but yeah, this was fun, man. I although I don't know your name and haven't seen your face, seems like we got a lot in common. So thanks for.
Are you based in Thailand?
You're
based out there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice, man. And I saw you do Muay Thai too. Are you a fighter?
Not yet. I'm training for my first one, but I just like doing it, man. I mean, it's so much fun. Have you ever done it?
No, fuck no, dude. I'm not ballsy enough. I carry a gun at all times. I'm not getting in a street fight with anybody.
No, but I mean, even if you don't compete, man, like just the work. Because I used to go to the gym and shit when I was younger, and like it's just so fucking boring. I going from like station to station. So I got involved in it, and it's just like it's a awesome workout. Keeps you fit. It's fun. You learn all the time. So. And that's just one of the many amazing things about Thailand. I mean, the food is great, and my girlfriend's here, so it's a pretty nice place to be. But yeah, hopefully end of this month, I'll get in the ring and mix it up for the first time.
You're doing it right, dude. Living in a cheap place like that and stacking sats is the way to go. You know.
Yeah, it's I can't complain, man. We live across the street from the beach and drink fresh coconuts on the daily and go for walks on the beach at 6 p.m. And so, dude, it's a nice place to be. Awesome. I mean, you do miss like hustle and bustle if you're only in this sort of environment, but for the time being, it's pretty sweet. So, no complaints.
Yeah. Where'd you come from before?
I'm from Newfoundland, Canada.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I've been living in Shanghai for the last 7-ish years. A little stint in Beijing as well. So I've been in China for most of the last decade.
Man, do you worry about what's going on back in Canada? Because it seems to be even worse than what's going on here.
Dude, like I realized a long time ago that because when I first went down like the rabbit hole of how the world works, like when I was, fucking 18, 19, 20, get on a YouTube binge for 5 fucking days or something like that. Like right. And of course, there's a lot of bullshit out there, but you end up being able to kind of parse and understand like how things more or less work. It just bummed me out hugely. I was like, fuck, that kind of hopelessness that I was talking about earlier, that kind of Bitcoin, I think is maybe turning around. But I realized like, well, first of all, that really sucks. And I get really bummed out when I think about all that kind of stuff. On the flip side, like I wake up in the morning and nobody's on my back. Like I can walk out the door and do whatever the fuck I want. And if it's a beautiful day, I can enjoy that, or, you know what I mean? So I just decided like, I got to focus on the good shit because there's a hell of a lot of bad shit. And if I just focus on that all the time, I'm going to be miserable. Totally. That's why, like, whether it's Canada, the U.S., I mean, what's going on in China right now is pretty scary as well. Like, I pay attention. I keep tabs on it because I want to be informed, but I try not to be too invested in it, which is probably why I don't live in. I don't have to be invested in it because I don't live in the country. But yeah, I mean, it's all concerning, man. What's going on with speech around the world? What's going on with politics around the world? What's going on with. And the crazy thing, man, is like you can be convinced if you're in your own little bubble that like it's just kind of like the it's just the political dialogue or it's just the mainstream media. But like I hate to say this to any friends that are listening, but when I go home and I hang out with people, and not all obviously, but like I'm usually pretty surprised at how pervasive like the kind what I would describe as like kind of fucked up thinking or you know
Oh
that's
man.
maybe a bit harsh, but you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of the thing that you just asked me about, am I scared about? Like that thing, I didn't realize that like normal people that I consider myself like the same as more or less, or like, you know, that I grew up with or friend, social group or whatever, like actually are, are into that. Like that's how
Yeah.
they think, you know, and I'm the type that's going to get into the arguments at you know social gatherings and stuff with people, and that's kind of why I kind of withdraw from it a bit because like I know that if I'm in the vicinity of someone like making a ridiculous claim, then I'm going to you know I'm going to engage, not like in a hostile manner, but I'm going to press, and
Yeah.
and it just ends up being like this thing where like I you get to a brick wall where you're like, there's no logic or reason here, so there's really no conversation that can be had. So I guess I just won't bother myself with having them.
I spent a lot of my time, man, thinking about how I can rewrite the software that people have stuck in their brain. And, there's no good answers for it. It's, thought viruses are real, and they attach
Totally.
themselves to people, and they can really, man, they can make your entire life just so much worse.
Yeah.
I went through this with my father who died last year, and he, he always just, he had that upbringing, tough upbringing. He always just felt worthless. And I saw him die and still have this worthless feeling attached to himself.
Right.
And I just, I wish I could have shown him, DMT and all these things. And he would have never fucking done it. There's no way. But
Yeah.
I was just like, man, you didn't have to go through your whole life feeling worthless. Come on, you could have snapped out of it at the end here at least.
Yeah.
So
You know what, man?
it's scary to me that those thought viruses can attach themselves to people and then cling on to your last breath.
Yeah.
That's so scary.
And they take you over, right? Like, and I think, you know, Peterson's kind of made this case before in that like people, and this happens in many different ways and forms, but people become ideologically possessed, and you're no longer speaking with like the rational, independent consciousness in human form in front of you. You're speaking with someone who's regurgitating a program that's been embedded in them. You know what I mean? And I know that
Yeah.
sounds harsh,
Well,
and I could get a lot of criticism for
yeah.
seeming like up on my high horse, being able to judge everybody like that. But it's pretty hard to make the case that that's not happening a lot in today's world.
Well, you seem like a pretty smart guy, and so I think you've come to a lot of the same conclusions that I've come to. And but I think we all watch the same material. Like, do you ever watch the Zeitgeist films when you're going
Well,
down your
well,
YouTube rabbit hole
back
thing?
in the day, for sure. Like
Yeah, right, right. And I think we watch those, and we're like, yeah, kinda, not really,
right,
But some people watch that kind of shit, man, and they just convince themselves that reptilians were running the world, and
right.
you know all this kind of crazy stuff.
Well,
And that we should just print money, like.
that shit is good because it sparks maybe some like it sparks some interest. It brings some things to
Right,
light that you
right.
may not have considered before. But like you're gonna have to show me, like I'm gonna need to see a lot more evidence, and then
Yeah,
no matter what, I'm still gonna have to put it through my own like meat grinder. And if it comes out and I think it's legit, then I'll hold it as legit until proven otherwise. And if not, then I'll let it go. But yeah,
that's one
I
of the
think
powerful things about Bitcoin, man. It's like when I first got into Bitcoin, I heard all these things about the chain, it's immutable and everything. And then I would just put on, block explorers and just watch blocks propagate for myself.
right.
And I just sit there while I was doing other stuff on the computer and just watch the network propagate. And I was just like, okay, this is insane. I'm just verifying this, for myself. It's crazy. And then
Yeah.
my lived experiences from the past, led me to all this. Did you ever do? We're about the same age. Did you ever do SETI when you were a kid? The satellite, or was
The
it Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence?
What do you mean do it? It's a place, right?
Well, no, SETI had a program that everybody would run on their as a screensaver in the
Oh,
late '90s, early 2000s, and you were contributing basically hash power to SETI's search. And so
really?
it was it was this awesome thing that you were part of, where you were like, I'm helping search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and Bitcoin is kind of the same thing. It's like, by running my node, I'm
Right.
helping, usher in this golden age of humanity.
Totally,
Yeah,
totally. But man, I think,
yeah,
back to that point about why people are like that, I think a lot of it comes from, people being really uncomfortable with uncertainty or with not knowing or with not having an answer for things. And as a result of that, just kind of clutching at whichever one is most, whatever the popular one is, whatever the easiest one, so that would attract the
yeah.
least amount of criticism and attention is, so like whatever it is, people don't want to seem stupid or uninformed or incompassionate or whatever it is, so they'll just align with whatever, the dominant way of thinking, and therefore, you can avoid criticism, and you can stay in the comfy thing. And for me,
Right.
that's never been a concern. Like I've never cared about, like for me, not knowing, the question mark is like almost a holy thing. Like I'm all about the questions, and I think, I don't know why some people seem to have like a more innate curiosity than others. Something I've thought about a lot, because I've always been just insanely curious, and that leads to
Hmm.
me that leads to me wasting a lot of time, maybe having a bias toward learning instead of action, which is not always beneficial. So that, like, there's downsides for sure, but uh, it does mean that your mind remains open, and that like you figure things out for yourself. And like you were saying, like one of the things you're fascinated by is that whatever that unlock is for getting people to, like, you know, let go of a mind virus or think differently about a certain thing. For me, I don't know what the answer to that question is. It's super hard, obviously, but it does happen,
Yeah.
which is why, whether it's Bitcoin or psychedelics or whatever, and I want to know, like, what is that thing that happens that makes it happen, that unlocks. But yeah, I, it's one of those things. Like, why are some people just kind of seem to be born with a more open mind, some with a more closed mind? Like, who knows?
It's also your environment, the content you consume, all those kind of things. And, a lot of it, I don't know if you're familiar with any of John Haidt's work, but John
A
Haidt
little
is
bit, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Harvard social psychologist. And, basically the crux of his work is that we have feelings, and then we spin reasons for them using our neocortex,
Sure.
because our limbic system is much more evolved than our neocortex. So you go, when you functionally, you do fMRIs on people, you ask them, what ice cream do you want? They say chocolate. And then you ask them why, and they confabulate an answer. So chocolate's healthier, it has antioxidants, whatever. But their brain decided it 6 seconds ago, before they even said it.
Right.
So their feelings are just like, chocolate's good, right? And then your rational mind goes into press secretary mode for your
Right.
feelings, and it's like, well, here's the thing, antioxidants. I read an article about that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what we do is just not, we don't want to lose face in front of people, and people have a hard time accepting that maybe you're not in control of your thoughts and
Right.
feelings. You know
And
what I
just
mean?
constantly trying to rationalize your existence, like rationalize what your expression of yourself is. And I
Right,
get it. I mean,
right.
we've all had moments or prolonged periods or reasons for insecurity, and noticing how that manifests in behavior. But yeah, I just think being as aware as you got to be aware as that shit as possible, and I think that's ultimately beneficial. But you know what, man? And on the last point about all this stuff is the same thing that I'm currently, that I'm sure, as we've talked about, we've experienced when we talk about Bitcoin with other people. I remember, and I've since let go of this pretty much, and just deferred to making content around it, and people can take it for what it is. But with
Right.
psychedelics, 15 plus years ago, when it started becoming important to me, like I said, like I was like, holy fuck, like
Oh
how
yeah.
do people not know about this? How is it not like on the front page of the paper? And I'd be so like intent on trying to get people to like believe or see or understand what the hell I was saying to them without coming off as like a crazy
Hmm.
druggy like Fruit Loop or something. And and it's the exact same thing, you know, like you just met with a brick wall, like that information or that it's just not allowed in. Like you for some people, like there's no access. And then other
Oh,
and
totally,
but then
totally.
on the other hand, you get people that like you encounter that they're super curious, and then the door is wide open, and you can have a really interesting conversation. And you know, as an aside, that seems to be what's happening now with this kind of psychedelic renaissance. Is like for whatever reason, more and more people are starting to ask those questions. Like, well, maybe this stuff like isn't just for weirdos, and maybe there's some legs to this, and maybe it's worth me knowing about and understanding a bit better and all that kind of stuff. So
Man, did you ever have that moment where somebody was like, you had that magical transcendent experience, and then you came down from the mountaintop and tried to explain it to your friend, and they were just basically like, yeah, okay, put the bong down, bro.
yeah,
And you're just
oh,
like,
obviously I've had
fuck
that.
you, man. Like, fuck you. You
Many,
just,
many
you can't,
times.
people are still in the cave, man. You can't, you gotta,
Exactly, exactly. But you know, but
you can't be
I
told what the matrix is.
right, exactly. But I check, you know, I don't speak in that language too often because like I was on the other side of someone being adamant about something in the past too, and like
Hmm.
when I didn't see it and they were adamant, I was just like, well, this guy's a dick, or like he thinks he's super smart, or what an ego, or whatever. So like again, that's why I kind of those conversations are great if people like really want to have them, but otherwise, I'm just going to do my thing, and if people are attracted to it and like gain anything from it, then that's awesome. And if not, then you know I'm not really here to convince anybody of anything.
Well, you sound like like you have a teacher's mindset, which is something I don't have. I'm just like, hey, here's how it is. Here's how it is, fuckers. Deal with it. You
Well,
know?
man, I'm thoroughly entertained by the brief exposure to your tweets that I've gotten thus far, and I'll be keeping track of them ongoing. So yeah, don't change.
I won't. I won't. Thanks for the great conversation, brother.
Yeah, man, you too. And let's do this again in 6 to 12 months. I'm sure there'll be lots more to talk about then.
Totally. Anytime.
All right, take care, brother.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
Cheers.